Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Disruptor Talks. We started this podcast with the objective of introducing you, the audience, to people who have been disrupting the status quo with their ventures. Our guest today is Rajesh Iyengar, founder and CEO of Lincode.ai. Lincode is a deep learning company which helps manufacturers inspect the quality of their products and improve the overall efficiency using computer vision. Their mission is to transform the manufacturing space into smart factories using vision intelligence. They recently raised a round of funding from Accel Partners and from us here at Disruptors Capital. As a quick background on us, we are Disruptors Capital, an early stage venture capital fund investing in technology startups in India, Southeast Asia, and the US. In a nutshell, we like to invest in businesses that build for a global audience. Lincode is precisely that. Hear directly from Rajesh what it takes to build a truly global AI company. Enjoy. Rajesh, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much as well for your time.
Firstly, let me congratulate you for the fundraising round. So it's funny for me to do that because I'm coming in as one of your investors alongside Accel. But again, I think it's a great milestone. And we obviously wish you all the best.
Yeah, thanks, Raj. Really appreciate you guys trusting us. Definitely, it's going to be a great teamwork going forward.
Yeah. Rajesh, it'll be great for us to know your journey to get into Lincode. You've been a serial entrepreneur. You've done this before, and now you're at this point wherein you are looking to, lead a huge change in the industry 4.0 space, right?
Right.
So, would love to get to know about how you arrived at this and your journey to Lincode.
Sure. Actually, I started my career way back in 2001, and I've been in the corporate sector for about 4 years. Worked in different locations globally, and Norway being the last one. And after that, I got into startups primarily because I saw an opportunity when I was working, and I definitely found that it's an area definitely I would like to try on. And I quit my job in Norway and I came to India and started my first company. Those started as a services company, but we moved eventually into a product. And after 3 successful exits in different locations globally again, I started Lincode. And the reason for starting a Lincode is I had this experience of previous startups, and one led to another basically, and that is the reason why I started Lincode.
So that's very interesting, right? Because Lincode is a very different kind of a problem to solve from what was happening to you guys before. So what was the process like for you and your co-founder to kind of come together and say that, hey, this is the problem that we want to solve?
Yeah. So basically, we were sure that AI is going to be a major problem solver, and there are definite real world challenges which can be solved using AI. And at that point, when in 2017, when we planning to start Lincode, at that point we definitely had a lot of areas where AI was not fully functional, especially in the manufacturing. So we were sure about that, but we were not sure where do we start in the manufacturing. So we didn't want to start something and then see that it's not scalable or it is not something which is handled by our team basically. So that's the reason why we actually went to the manufacturers themselves and we asked them questions like, what are their top 10 challenges? And we figured that one most common problem across different manufacturers, not only the US or Europe, it was also in India. So we actually interviewed them, and we figured that quality inspection was the biggest challenge, and we figured the reason as well why it is a challenge. And then we figured that this is one thing which definitely is most challenging, and we should get into this space. And that's how we got into this space.
Right. So could you briefly talk to us about what Lincode actually does? This is for the more general audience, right?
Right.
And the way I would kind of mold this question is how would you explain Lincode to a 4-year-old?
So manufacturing, we all know what happens in a manufacturing, right? So you produce a product and then you package it and send it to various people outside, right? And as we are, using certain in products, we always see that kind of a defect in that end product. It could be problem with product not working, or it could be some deformation in the product, right from your toothbrush to your Mac or even your cars. You see some kind of a defects occurring in that. So Lincode is primarily focused on solving those defects basically. So we want to make sure that manufacturers don't send those products out to their customers. None of the products should be defective when it reaches to the customer. That's the goal of Lincode, and that is what we do as well.
Right. I think we'll go one layer deeper, which is that you guys are actually a deep tech company in the truest sense of the word,
Right.
right? But that phrase, a deep tech or artificial intelligence startup, those are phrases which are often thrown around cheaply, especially when you're fundraising as a startup and everything.
Right.
How would you say a company qualifies to call themselves a true AI or a true deep tech company?
Sure. So today, if you see, anybody can get into the AI. To be honest, getting into a business with the AI is much more easier than building a ERP or any other, full stack products, basically. So the reason for that is because the way the open source has brought in AI, it made people really access AI much easier than any other technology, basically. But the problem is, as you say, the deep tech word, right? So how are you going to build a model? Because deep tech is all about your valuable data sets. If you don't have a great data sets, it's not going to be functioning well, and that's the reason why you need to focus on the data sets. And the true deep tech companies are the ones which have solved the data set problem in a efficient way, and they are the ones who are going to be like true deep tech startups, I would say.
Yeah, I think that answers the question much more clearly about what qualifies as a data science company. At this point, it'd be great for us to understand the product use cases that Lincode has across different verticals.
So, as manufacturing is very much diversified. Like I just said a while ago, right from your toothbrush to your cars. Um, Even it includes your chemicals like paints and pharmacy, or your any of your drugs that is produced. So it's wide across huge vertical it is. But we as a company, we cannot be going into each and every sector straight away. We being a startup, we want to be very mindful of that, and we wanted to focus on areas that we are very very strong initially, and then provide solution to those areas. So we figured that instead of going and looking at automotive or aerospace as a sector, we thought that it makes much sense for us, because the way we have built the product, the way we built the models, it made sense for us to go with surface based, because we are actually inspecting the surface of each and every product for any kind of defects. So it made sense for us to look at what kind of surface that we are inspecting. Like, for example, steel and metal as a surface, plastic as a surface, glass as a surface. So in that sense, we are actually providing solutions to the industry, which is basically using steel and metal. It could be a CNC milling process or a forging process, or it could be a metal injection molding, or even casting process. So any of the companies, manufacturing companies, into a steel and metal using these kind of processes, they will be immensely happy to use our solutions, because we are solving most critical of problems, especially for the CNC milling companies and forging companies, where it has to be high precise products. Like, for example, if a part is going to a aerospace industry or an automotive industry, precision is very very critical word, and they have to make sure that their product are high precision, and both dimensionally and also without any defects, basically. So that's why most of our companies clients, they are very very happy with the way we have provided solutions. So that makes us to be in this space currently, which is in the steel and metal and plastic injection molding. So these are the two huge industry use cases that we are into currently.
Right. So if I have to boil it down for the layman,
Hmm.
what Lincode basically provides is a service wherein surface level detection can be done, for example, in a space like automotives. If it's a bonnet of a car which is being passed through,
Right.
the computer vision can look at it and tell with very high accuracy whether there is a fault in the making of that bonnet or not. Right.
That's good.
Similar use cases then copy to PCBs or aerospace, and that is the beauty of the product itself. That it can have multiple use cases. It depends on how well the AI is taught to recognize them with respect to different verticals. Would that be the right way of putting it?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Rajesh. Oftentimes, what happens is that young founders are so focused on building what they're building, right? So it turns out that they put in a lot of focus on building out the tech,
Right.
right? And then they miss out on the business aspect of it, which is around getting clients, getting contracts, closing those. Or it's the other way around, right? Wherein there is so much of a rush to do business that you've not built a good enough product to create value, right?
Yeah.
One of the things that we really liked when we met you, and I'm sure that was the case for Axel as well, was that you had been able to balance the two really well, right?
Right.
Do you think that was, that had come as a natural instinct after doing, three ventures before, or was that by design rather than by default?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So basically, I would say this is purely based off experience in the past. So what we have seen is, and also hearing out, listening to various startups or various founders quite often, and that actually made us to think, not rushing into building a full tech platform, or not rushing into too much of business as well. So we wanted to be very clear, because in the past we have seen a lot of companies build great products, but they could not sustain, and they could not sell them. Whereas on the other hand, there are great companies who had a great business strategy, and they were able to do business, but they were not able to execute or deliver the products on as promised. So we have seen both of the
Right.
worlds. And this is an experience that we've learned out of others' mistakes as well, is that you don't need to rush into building something without knowing how deep the requirements are, how deep the market is, all of that. So we had this blessing of past experience as well, so we could start with understanding what is the challenges in that particular market, and then bringing in the market research into play, in terms of identifying what is the actual market. Of course, everybody can go into Google and search that, what is the market today for a specific industry. It will throw out saying that 600 billion or 7 trillion and stuff like that. But that could be from a, various perspectives. So we may not be knowing the deep down of our industry or our particular products that we are going to sell. So what makes sense is to go to a customer and speak directly. That throws a lot of light to understand what exactly they are facing the problem, and who are the existing competitors, and why they are not able to solve the problem. This kind of interviews itself will solve major challenges in terms of what industry you are trying to focus, and that is what led us to today whatever we are.
Right. So I see, there's a lot of learnings from your previous experiences that you take, right? And then you kind of apply it here.
Right.
Does it also impact how your long-term thinking was with respect to venture building, let's say in your first venture versus now? So if you have to make a 10-year plan or a 20-year plan, how is your mindset different now versus, let's say two ventures back?
Yeah, sure. Of course, everybody learns from a mistake. So I have done tons of mistake in my previous startups, and that is one thing I really corrected that in the current venture. The one is quick to sell. That was some of the mistake I did, and also going too much into services business. That's also one of the mistake I did in one of my startup. So balancing it out is very important. Product business is always greater than services business, and relying only on the product is much better than going into services. I always feel I learned after doing my couple of ventures in the services. And the next thing is exits. So I think exits has to be meticulously planned, and make sure that everybody involved in the company, not just the founders, the investors, or even the partners whom we initially rely on. So they also are happy with the exits, and even the customers for that matter. So that is the most important thing. That's the experience I learned from my past.
Right. That was very insightful,
Yeah, yeah.
Rajesh. Thank you for
Thank
that.
you.
I think the next part of this, right, is more related to work that even Lincode is doing.
Hmm.
Now we are in this phase of the fourth industrial revolution,
Right,
right, which is Industry 4.0, as it's called, which is basically digital transformation of manufacturing and production related processes.
right.
Now, from your perspective, right, there's definitely Lincode, which is a part of this. What other opportunities do you see within this space, and what is your perspective on how this is going to evolve over the next 5 to 10 years?
Sure. So there are huge veterans in this industry, and everybody is now talking about Industry 4.0, and there are huge giants as well globally who are focusing on Industry 4.0. But the real under bottom line here is, it's not just limited to AI or deep tech. There are so many other areas where Industry 4.0 is going to help manufacturers transform completely. Okay, so we all know that manufacturing is a huge business, and there is it's a huge market in itself. But manufacturers are definitely going through various challenges themselves. Like, one of them is the employee labors basically. So the involvement of manual labor is high, and they're not getting enough employees or enough staff for them to conduct their manufacturing operations efficiently. So the reason for that is the other industry has gone much faster. Like for example, your delivery industry or the Uber or taxi industry has gone really high, and they're doing really well. And because of that, the manufacturer had a very interesting look at it. Like for example, one of the manufacturers were telling us that since most of these employees had to be confined into in a single roof, they didn't have the liberty to go out on a coffee break or a tea break or a lunch break at the time they were willing to. But whereas the delivery industry or the taxi industry has made them to become think like a entrepreneur, and they're able to go out whenever they want and stop working whenever they want to. So because of that, the manufacturers are facing a resource crunch to get a manpower into their manufacturing process, and that is actually killing some of their business. They are not able to scale, or they are not able to improve their productivity. And because of that, they are willing to automate most of their manufacturing process, and they are looking for tools and equipments to continuously automate their processes basically. So not just the AI alone, there is a big opportunity for people into the automation industry. Basically, it could be IoT, or it could be AR, VR, it could be AI again, or a computer vision, so on. So there are huge potential in the industry basically.
Right. I think that makes a lot of sense. From another point of view, from the if you look at all the challenges that Industry 4.0 is actually facing at this point, one of them is the whole pushback that you get, of jobs versus automation,
Right.
which somebody like you and I can probably understand that. Oftentimes, it's not that the jobs are removed; it's much more that the jobs are transformed into something else, right?
Right.
But that message politically becomes a little tougher to kind of put across. How much do you think this entire, jobs versus automation versus, robots taking over the jobs is going to be a hindrance to basically the Industry 4.0 revolution?
Sure. So if you look at the jobs which is currently looked at to be replaced with automation, is nowhere related to the jobs which are white collar jobs or medium segment jobs. It's all mundane tasks which could be done in a very simplistic automated way basically. So it's not
Right.
really taking away anybody's job for that matter. It's basic, as I said, like the manufacturing people are really feeling the absence of people for these mundane tasks, and that is what primarily they are trying to automate. They are not trying to remove somebody's existing job or something like that. So that is the reason why still the jobs are going to be always there in the manufacturing, and automation is going to be playing a major way as well. So if you look at the white collar job, like for example, a production engineer or a design engineer or a maintenance engineer, they will never lose their job, because those are the people who would come in the higher level or a mid level segment.
Hmm.
Here we are talking about the lower level segment, which is where the crunch is, and they're relying on a contract staffing on this because they're not getting a depth of staff for this. So the challenge is not really about automation. The challenge is the scalability of the automation and how you're going to price it for automating a certain mundane task basically. So that is going to be the challenge, and that has to be overcome. So something has to be built for scalability, and that will solve the problem for manufacturers.
Absolutely. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Moving on, you've been privileged to have run businesses both out of the Indian startup ecosystem as well as in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
In fact, Lincode is based out of both places. What would you say is the one thing that the Indian ecosystem needs to take away from the Bay Area, and one thing that the Bay Area needs to take away from the Indian ecosystem?
I would like to, see from my perspective. I would not recommend it for everybody else, but I would see from my perspective as what we need to learn from India first. I would say is, you know, we are very known for doing things in a very simplistic way. Like we don't spend a lot, and we don't, have way too high budgeted for even staffing or even for any of the things that we do. And that's a big advantage for us. We try to keep things simpler, and we try to keep things economical, and that is the reason why Indian companies are very successful, and they're going to be our leader in the whole world very soon. So we are actually becoming bigger and better. Whereas from the US, that we need to learn is, I would say more with R&D. So R&D is one thing, US is very well known for, where they, especially in the Silicon Valley, there's a lot of R&D which happens, and there's a lot of innovation which happens. And most importantly, funding also supports them for the innovations, basically. So that's one thing we all need to understand, that like funding needs to be supported for various R&D work. And another important factor that I personally see in the US is the sales or marketing tactics that they use, the strategies they use are phenomenal. And that is where Indian startups have to focus on how to message their product, or how to message to their customers or the whole audience. That's what needs to change in the Indian segment. These are the two things I would say we need to learn from the US.
I think that's very aptly put. And I will not get you in trouble by asking you what you dislike about either of the ecosystems,
Okay.
because I know that I know that won't serve you or me well at
Yeah,
this point.
that's right.
So we often have quite a few young founders view the podcast at this point as well, right? What would be the lessons that you would want to give somebody, let's say, 21, looking to now start up, because pandemic has thrown everything in the air. So people have that opinion that, hey, I might as well start up. What would be your just a few tips to them, or your life lessons that you want to probably boil down in 1 or 2 points to them?
Sure. Starting off with the challenge is very, very important. So understanding what all the actual challenges, talking to the respective users or market is a better way, because that will save you a lot of time, a lot of losses, and even some companies have shut down because of not starting properly, and, product market fit, basically, that we say. That is a first and foremost thing. And the next important thing is, these days there's a lot of support available, and utilize all the support. Like, for example, accelerators are there, incubators are there. Please utilize them very well. And now it's become boundaryless. Even if Indian startups can get a help from US incubators or accelerators. In fact, there's a lot of US and European accelerators are looking forward for Indian startups, Indian ideas. So you should research a lot. And like Ep.5 is one of them, where they advertise about what all the accelerators or challenges which is open for startups or even entrepreneurs. So you should do those kind of research and start. And third thing is, be mindful of how much you're raising. You should not be raising too much as well, which will burn down your equity. And don't raise less also when you have an opportunity to raise. So it should be balanced out on that way. So these are the three things I would say for everybody who's starting off.
All very, very valid points. Another question, one of the things that a lot of people think about, including myself, is how, with the evolution of technology, the future generations would look like, right? One of the things is there's this book called Clara and the Sun, which is just got I think the Booker Prize this year, and I was just reading that, and it's about society wherein every kid will look to have a AF, an artificial friend, right? And there are these showrooms with artificial friends, right? And parents want their kids to have an artificial friend, so that that artificial friend can teach them, all the good qualities of empathy and everything that a parent wants their kids to have, right? And this book is from the perspective of the artificial friend. So it's a whole new kind of a lens from which you can look at things. Another thing which comes across there is every time there's another artificial friend outside of the showroom, he passes by really fast, because anybody who's bought already, right? So every kid has one artificial friend, but they pass by a store really fast because they are afraid that their child will ditch them for an upgraded technology, right? An upgraded artificial friend. So these are all dystopian scenarios that are kind of painted out, right? Given that this is a lot of this is IoT and industry. How do you see a world, let's say, in 2040, and how do you see Lincode having evolved by then?
Yeah, sure. Like, forget about 2040, the way it's going. If you see in the last 2 years itself, we have seen a drastic change in the way AI used or robots are functioning today, or even robots have evolved in the last 2 years. There's a major change in the way things have evolved. So in the next 10 years itself, it's going to be huge. Like, one of them is going to be your air taxis, which is going to be completely drone based, and even your deliveries, like whatever you're receiving, your couriers or anything, that's going to be completely drone based or automated, autonomous drones, which is going to come and deliver medicines or any of those. So the same way in manufacturing, it's going to be all robots which will be functioning. completely autonomous factories where there won't be any even single man. And because of that, there won't be even lights will be used. There are predictions that light will never be used in a factory floor ever. So the reason is, if the robots are going to function, robots don't need lights. Only human beings need lights, and that's going to save, on the power side, and also the entire floor is going to be automated. So it's going to be AI driven, and it's going to be robotic. So robot is going to play a major role going forward along with AI and AI. That is where Lincode will be playing a big role in the robotics and AI, basically.
Great. I think as our final question, at what stage of development for the company at this point would you say you or Lincode has been a success?
So, moment we know that every manufacturers globally are aware of Lincode, that would be the successful point for us. Every manufacturer actually knows Lincode is a great visual inspection company. That is what we want to know. So we will be proud of. Today, we are getting that feel with India. We have achieved that in India, I would say, because some of our competitors, when they go to any manufacturer, and if the manufacturer says Lincode was already here, we had heard story that the competitor has told, if Lincode is already here, we cannot get any business. They've left that place. So this is what we want to hear globally, not just India. So that's when we say that we are really successful.
So in another way, if I have to put it in your business terms, that means zero false calls per probably 100 million parts.
Yeah, that's correct.
Is that the right way to put it?
That's the right way
Awesome.
to put it. Yeah.
Great. Rajesh, thank you so much for taking the time today. Hopefully, we'll get to do this a lot more often.
Yeah.
And we wish you all the success with this fundraise, and we look forward to partnering together with you, riding on your coattails.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Raj. Thanks for having me here. Thanks for this opportunity. And also thanks for trusting in us.